One of the most addicting games that has been released recently could be now developed by you. So in this video we are going to learn how to develop the Wordle game with Python, and that's going to be very fun because we are going to learn throughout the process. We are going to learn best practices when it comes to developing object-oriented programs with Python, and it is going to be very fun because the game itself is very fun to play as well. So developing it is going to be even a better experience. So I believe that you have some great reasons to follow along with this video. And before we get started with the video, I would appreciate your like on this video, so it will help me a lot to spread this video on YouTube. And with that being said, let's get started. So what is that fun game? So Wordle is a game where you have to guess a 5-letter word, and you do that by providing some words and then you receive some hints after each word that you type. So for example, if we start with the word of clear, then we will receive the A letter back as a green color. So this means that in the word that they are looking for, the A is located in this exact position as the 4th letter. Now I can start guessing words that the 4th letter is A. So let's go with squad. And there is the yellow color now. And when we see the yellow color, it means that the letter exists, but not in that position for sure, right? So it could be in one of those three. Now I can continue on guessing here. Maybe it could be dread, something like that. Okay, so the D is also not here, so it should be in that position or in that position. Now we should take a note that when we provide a word that doesn't really exist, let's make up some 5 letters, you can see that we receive word not in list. So let's go with a word that will include some key letters like O, let's say glory. Okay, so you can see that the Y is here and the O is located somewhere as well, and we have the D that should be in this on or that position. So the O letter could be here as well, so we could have something like a letter and doe or oday, something like that. So it might be today. Let's go with it. Okay, so this was the word that they are looking for. So that's how the game works. We are going to develop this with Python. It is going to be playable every time that you want to play by only saying python run.py, and it's going to be a lot of fun developing this. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so we have our PyCharm here, and we also got a terminal opened where the directory is the directory of the project. We have currently one Python file where we are going to write the code inside of it. The first thing that we want to get started with is to get a list of valid words that are 5-letter words. In order to do that, I actually visited a website before preparing this video that generated me around 3,000 words, something in that kind, where each word is a valid word that is made from 5 letters. So you can bring this list from my code snippets repo, go to Wordle in terminal, of course find the link of the repo from the description, go to that validwords.py file, and then one of the great tricks that you can go ahead and copy this easily is changing the URL from blob here to row, so we will get it as a row string, and then you can easily Control A this one, and then we can minimize that one and paste this in a separated Python file. Makes sense to call it valid words, and we can paste this in. Okay, so you can see this is a very nice list here with a bunch of valid words that pay attention that each word includes only 5 letters. This is the concept of this game. Okay, so now that we have done this, let's get started with checking out if some things will start to work for us. So I will go ahead and say from valid words import valid words. This is my list, and then let's go ahead and first see the length of this list, right? This could be interesting. I will go here and say python main.py. You can see that it includes almost 2,500 words, which is pretty good to get started with. Okay, so now that we came up with this, let's go ahead and start writing some logic of our game. Now, we could go ahead and start by creating a Python file that will include at least one class about our game. So let's go ahead and name this Wordle. And inside this class, we could go ahead and start with one class that we could name guess word. Now, for each guess that we are going to do throughout the game, we are going to initialize an instance of this class, and we need to take some actions in each time that we guess a word. We need to validate if the word is valid, and if so, we need to maintain a counter and increase it, and so on. So let's go step by step and walk through this. So first things first, let's start with the initialization method. Now we know that we want to receive at least one important which will indicate the word that is guessed. Now I'm going to name this w_str, basically word string, because I already know that it is a great idea to maintain the list version of our word here, because we are going to deal a lot in checking for the index for exact characters and so on. So I'm going to say that this should be a type hint, and I'm also going to use colon here and say that this should be a type of string. And now that we have done this, I'm going to say that self.wstr is equal to wstr. And then once we assign this, we can also go ahead and create some more attributes for each instance of our classes. We can go ahead and say w_Charles equals to list of self.wstr. And now that we have done this, let's quickly test if that's going to work for us. Now I'm going to delete everything from here. I'm going to go back to my Wordle file. I'm going to say something like, I'm going to import the valid words from here. Import valid words, because we are going to use this actually from that file. Okay, so now that we have done this, then I'm only going to say here import Wordle, and then I'm going to say if name is equal to _main. Obviously, if that's executing directly, then we want to start preparing our game. So we want to go ahead and create an instance, at least one, from this class here. So I'm going to make my variable name guess, and that's going to be equal to wordle.guessWord. And then we are basically going to pass in here just a random string like place, and see if everything is going to work for us. Now, in order to check all the attributes of this instance, there's actually a nice trick that I like, which is the magic method of DICT, stands for a dictionary. I can go ahead and print that by saying _DICT like that. Okay, so now that we came up with this, then let's go ahead and execute our program again. You can see that it works very well. We can see wstr place and the Charles, which is basically a list with 5 elements in it. Okay, so now that we came up with this, then it also makes sense to already take an immediate change here, which will be a change of, let's use a named parameter here. This should be named input. And the reason that I'm doing this, it is because when we play the game in the terminal, we want to guess the words obviously from the terminal, so it makes sense to receive an input. And I'm going to say here basically nothing, only something that indicates that this is now a active terminal that you have to provide a value. So I'm just going to use here this symbol, and once I'm doing that, basically it is going to behave the way it is, right? I'm going to say maybe guess, and it's going to just print me this line and get out of the program. In the future, we are going to wrap this around while true and do some more conditioning. And so let's go ahead and work on the logic of the game now. Okay, so now we are back in our Wordle file. Now we are going to implement some basic logic to really make this an interactive game. Now, we should be starting with some constants, and we should be also start with some class variables. Now we know that there are some variables that are never going to change throughout the execution of the program, and I will allow myself to create those variables here using all uppercases, so it will indicate this as a constant. Now, one of the first things that we want to start doing here is to implement a constant that we could name chosen word, because we know that for each word that is actually the word that we are looking for, we need to generate it somehow randomly. And obviously we can use the random library for that, which is a built-in library. I'm going to import this as import random, and I'm going to say random.choice, right? and I'm basically going to pick randomly one word from the valid words list, right? So this chosen word is going to store one word in each time that we execute our game. And this code is going to execute because we import this entire file from the main.py file. So this is perfect. Okay, so now that we have this, we also want to probably say that guesses count is equal to 7. This is a valuable information for our game as well. And now we are going to implement a logic of increasing some value, and that is going to be in that way. So we know that for each guess, we are going to initialize an instance of the guess word. So it means that our counter variable, so-called, should be in the class scope. So I'm going to say that counter is going to be equal to 1, and then let's go ahead and write an instance method that will increase this counter for each guess that we are guessing, of course. So let's go ahead and say jump turn, maybe increase count, any method that makes sense to you. And I'm going to go ahead and say guess word class reference dot counter plus equals 1, right? And now that we have done this, then let's go ahead and test if that's going to work for us. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to start wrapping our program with a while true conditional, and we want to be careful with this. So let's go ahead and use indentation here. And now, besides printing this one, let's go ahead and in each iteration print the counter, right? So Wordle dot guessword dot counter, right? But we should also using right before this print line the jump turn method that we came up with. Otherwise, we are going to see 1 each time, right? So we are going to say guess dot jump turn, right? So now we should go here and say, let's clean everything and execute our game. Okay, so let's use guess and let's use place. Okay, so it really increases. Now the problem is if we make up some word, then it also increases. We can go ahead and do that. It also increases. So we need to have a condition that checks if the given word is a valid word. If we remember from the game itself, if we do not provide a valid word, then it allows us to provide a guess again. It doesn't really jump to the next guess, right? So this is important. Now, the way that we could verify this is obviously going back to our program, and let's go to the Wordle class. We can come up with one more instance method here that will say is underscore valid. Now, I'm using this is underscore valid because we are checking if the guess word instance is valid or not, basically. So I'm going to say here return self.wstr, which represents the given word inside the valid words. This is a great indication about checking if the given word is actually a valid one. And if that's the case, then we want to jump the turn. So at first we use while true, and then we use the guess, and then here's the exact area that we want to start really playing the game, right? Is underscore valid, right? And then we basically want to go ahead and jump the turn if the given word is valid, and then we want to print the counter just for debugging right now. Okay, so let's check out if that's going to work for us. Let's go out from the game and let's go ahead and say Python main.py again, and I'm going to say just going to generate some characters, and you can see that we even do not see any output, and that's great because we don't print the counter in any case. We only print it in is valid case, right? So we can go ahead and say place, and we see a counter only if the word is valid. That's good. Let's go ahead and continue with the rest of the logic. There is a lot of work to do that is going to be very fun, so let's go ahead. Okay, so now that we understood that, let's go ahead and start implementing the basic logic of greening the letters. This means that the guessed word includes some letters in the exact position. So let's go ahead and work on this. Now I'm going to start first maintaining an attribute that will have an empty string. We could call this post guess WSTR. Basically an attribute that we should be filling in some strings to it once we checked if the guess is valid and also the letters of this guess. So I'm going to make this equal to an empty string like that. Okay, so scrolling down here, let's go ahead and write a method that we could call it apply greens. So once we do that, then let's go ahead and first iterate over our w underscore chars here. So what I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to say for I, comma, and then char in enumerate self.wchars. Now the enumerate function is a function that I really like, which allows you to iterate over the index number and the element itself in parallel. So this means that if I was to go ahead and say print I and print char, then we will receive here 0, and then the first char maybe p, and then after that we will receive 1, and then we will receive here y or l, whatever the letter it is. So this is really nice, and we are going to use the enumerate function's benefits in that case. Okay, so let's say for our simulation that the word that the game looks for is power. Okay, so I'm going to write this here with the white color. Okay, power. Our guess here was place, so it should be P, and then the other ones should be grayed out, right? Or basically whited out, whatever we want to call it. And I apologize for the awful skills of drawing some letters here. Now, once we go ahead and start iterating over enumerate, then it means that we have the control in the index case. So in case that the P's are a match, then we probably want to insert this P letter in a green version inside this post guess WSTR, and the rest of the letters should be inserted in regular colors, green, gray or white, whatever that really indicates that this is non-green and non-yellow. Okay, so now let's go ahead and see how we can do that. So first, let's use here two variables that will help us to work more easier. So I'm going to say actual char, meaning that the actual character from the chosen word, then this is going to be equal to chosen word, and then we're gonna basically say index I, right? Because for each time that we iterate over the characters, we want to basically bring it from here. And then I'm going to use here one more variable that we could name guessed char, and that's going to be equal to self.w underscore chars, and then we're gonna do index of I here as well. So now we are in a one iteration that the letters could be just equal and in the exact same position for sure, because we are still in the same iteration using I. And if that's the case, then we want to first, let's check it. If actual char is equal to guess char, then we want to somehow implement a logic that we return a green P here, like in this case. Okay, so here's how we can use the colored strings when it comes to the terminal. Now, let's go ahead and give this as an example here with class color. Okay, so inside the color class, we are going to maintain some valuable information about how a character could be colored in the terminal. Now, I already covered this in one of my tutorials that is called 2 projects in 1 video. I will include the link of this in the description. Basically, we write a program that colors the matched strings in a large list of files. So you could go ahead and watch it if you find it tough to basically using the colored version characters in terminal. Okay, so say that I want to print a character like P, right? If I go ahead and try to print this string, then it is going to print it in the original color. And since my terminal is cyan, then it's going to print it with the cyan color. But if I want to override the colors, then I need to include some special characters before the character itself. Now, this is known as NZ colors, but basically those are special characters that you can include before your strings so that they will make sure to be turned in the color that you expect. Now, those characters are actually very weird characters, so I'm going to go back to my repository here, and I'm just going to go back to this Wordle in terminal, and I'm going to bring in a new file here, colors.txt, and I'm just going to copy this section from here and paste this inside our class, so I will have an easier explanation now about what is going on here. Okay, so I brought my terminal to really explain how colors work. Now, if we go ahead and go inside Python now, okay, and then we use print p, then it will just print us p. But if we go ahead and use print p with the convention of characters for a green color, let's copy that and paste this in, then check out the result. You can see that this has been turned on with the green color. Now you should also see that from now on everything that I'm going to write is green. This is something that we want to avoid, and this is happening because I did not close my string with the actual base color. Now, base color is the default color that has been used before your desired color. So for each time that you want to print a colored version of a character, then it should start with your desired color and it should end up with the convention for base color, which is this one. So this is the default one, and this is just basically your base color. This is why you see the 0 value there. Okay, so this time I'm going to try print, and then I'm going to paste this as well. So those are the openers for green, and those are the closures. Let's go back to the base color. So now if I'm going to print that, then you can see what is happening here. We printed green P, and we are back in our original color. This is how coloring works. And so now we should be implementing the exact same logic, right? So I'm going to minimize the terminal here. I'm going to go there and I'm going to say colored underscore char is equal to a formatted string. And then I'm going to basically say actual char here, right? Because it doesn't really matter. The code here is going to execute no matter if it is actual or guess char, so I can use one of those. And here we should be saying color dot green, excuse me, and then we should be saying here color dot base, right? This is our colored character. And then if we have this, then it makes sense to take our list with the characters and override one of the elements in the exact index. So I can go ahead now and say self.w characters in the I position equals to colored char, like that. Now I know that I really did not use the char variable, so in that case you can just use underscore besides, so the user that reads this code could understand that you are only going to use the index from this enumerate iteration. Okay, so now that we understood this, let's go ahead and use here one more method that we could name apply guesses, because we know that there are a list of actions that we need to apply for each guess. In the future we are going to apply some gray colors for the letters that are already guessed, because we want to tell the user about that, and also yellow cases where the letter exists but not in the exact position. So now I'm going to go ahead and say self.apply greens, and then basically I'm going to print self.w chars. The reason that I'm printing this and not the WSTR, because I decided to use the list version and I decided to override the list version's elements, right? So that's why I want to see the results now in the apply guesses. Okay, so now that we understood this, let's go ahead and go back to our main.py file and test this entire logic. Now let me delete those characters from here. Perfect. Okay, so now if guess is valid, then we should be checking for apply guesses, right? We want to apply the guesses and we want to jump the turn. Now we really don't want to print the counter because it makes sense to delete it. We already know that this works, and let's just leave it as it is. Okay, so the apply guesses should print the w underscore characters. So I'm going to go back to my terminal. I'm going to get out from Python, clean the screen, Python main.py. Okay, so we don't know the actual word, so that's a bad idea because it might take a lot of time until we guess a correct character. I'm going to do a little bit trick here, main.py. Before the game starts, let's go ahead and write the chosen word to a file so we can really see. Let's call this file cheat.txt, makes a lot of sense, and use w permissions, and let's use as if, and then I'm going to say f dot write, and we should be writing wordle dot chosen word. And now that we have this, then obviously we are going to see the file here in just a bit. Now let's go ahead to our game. Let's use control break, something that will interrupt it. Python main.py once again, and okay, so cheat.txt ultra is the word that they are looking for. So let's go ahead and use union, right? Because we want to test the U. Okay, so this works. I know that we really don't see the U, but we actually see the added characters. Now, the reason that we do not see the actual color, it is because it is not printed you back in a string version. Now, the way that you can join all the elements into one string in a list is by using this small trick here. So we are going to go here to main.py and, excuse me, to wordle.py. And I'm actually going to benefit from the postguessWstr string that we have created. And I'm going to say here that the self.postguessWstr is equal to an empty string. And then I'm going to use join, because join is a method that takes an iterable and it joins all the elements to a string. Now, if I go ahead and say here wchars, then the expected behavior is that we will see all the elements inside the string. And now, after all this, it makes totally sense to print the postguessWstr. So we should be testing this one more time now. Again, control break, cls, python main.py. Let's check cheat.txt. Now we have meets. So I'm gonna go here and say mount, and this works perfectly. You can see that for M and for T we see the green color, so that's a great start. So until now we developed a game that only supports finding characters in the exact position, but in the next one we are going to complete our entire game. We are going to understand how you can find characters that are not in the exact position, and also we are going to just make it look nicer, so it's going to be fun to watch. Okay, so I will see you in part number 2. Don't forget to like this video and consider subscribing to my channel, and I will see you very soon.